Good afternoon, everyone. So after dealing with different aspects of wealth restructuring, now we'll be having a panel discussion on wealth creation through business restructuring. So when we say about wealth creation, it's a strategic process where we'll unlock the value of the organization by improving the efficiency and increasing the profitability by reducing the cost. So I would like to call the panelists first, Sri Pradeep Kumarji Agarwal. Please come on the dais. Pradeep Kumar, Sri Pradeep Kumar Agarwal is a member of ICI and has also cleared the cost accountant exam conducted by ICWAI. He also holds a bachelor degree in law from the University of Calcutta. He has an experience of over 30 years in the field of finance, operation and legal matters. He co-founded Bazaar Style Retail Limited, also known as Style Bazaar, in the year 2013, a modern value fashion retailer renowned for its affordable yet trendy products with a view for tapping the underpenetrated fashion value retail market. He is the chairman and the whole-time director of the company. He has played an instrumental role in the company's fundraising and also getting the company listed. May I call Renu Modi? Okay. She's not here. Okay. So may I call Mr. Raj to felicitate Sri Sakshi Jhajaria, please come and felicitate, sir, Sri Pradeep Kumar Ji Agarwal. Next, I would like to invite Mr. Anuj Singh. He is the MD and Chief Executive Officer of Spencer Retail Limited. Mr. Anuj Singh is a seasoned Mr. Anuj Singh is a seasoned commercial leader with experience across Fortune 100 companies in Europe, India and Middle East. Mr. Anuj spent his formative professional career in India working across sales and marketing roles in diverse industries like paints, tobacco and tea, and then spent over a decade in Europe and Middle East in global roles in the beverages and food service space. Mr. Anuj moved back to India a few years ago in a regional leadership role, post which he moved into the grocery retail sector and gained critical broad-based leadership experience in a highly competitive and dynamic environment. He is known for his warm, people-centric, high energy and objective style of leadership and is a godman and avid golfer. So I would like to call Renu Modi to felicitate, sir. Yeah, next I would like to call CA Rahul Chaudhary, CFO IFB Industries, IFB Agro Industry Limited, Kolkata, sir. Yeah, CA Rahul Chaudhary, based in Kolkata, holds a BCom from Calcutta University and has completed cost accountancy in June 94, chartered accountancy in May 95 with All India 50th rank and company secretary in June 1995. Since 2007, he has served as CFO of IFB Agro Industries Limited, where he has acquired extensive experience in banking, treasury and finance, as well as strategic planning for the company's growth and handling business acquisitions. Prior to his role, he worked at Usha Martin Industry Limited from 1995 to 2007. May I call Priyansi to felicitate the sir, please. Now I would like to invite our esteemed moderator, CA Vikas Kothari, Managing Director, JM Financial, Mumbai. Sir. CA Vikas Kothari is a seasoned investment banker and stands at the forefront of marquee transactions across diverse financial products. His independent leadership spans critical areas such as mergers and acquisitions, private equity, equity capital market, and restructuring. Vikas brings expertise in ideation, strategic positioning, valuation, corporate finance, deal structuring, skilled negotiation, and successful deal closures. Vikas holds chartered accountant qualification from 2004 and is also chartered financial analyst with over 19 years of experience. He has been an integral part of GM Financial since 2007. Prior to that, Mr. Vikas spent 2 years at Morgan Stanley. So may I call again Priyansi to felicitate CA Vikas Kothari. Now may I call CA Sakshi Jajaria. Thank you. So now over to you, CA Vikas Kothari, to take the session from here.
Thank you everyone. It's indeed a privilege for me to be attending this seminar out here. Thank you to the Eastern Regional Council for giving me this opportunity of sharing this dais with this esteemed panel, which comprises of some distinguished personalities. In fact, if one were to see, we have, people who come from a very, very diverse background. Someone who started with his practice and then turned into an entrepreneur, Pradeep ji. We have a CFO who has seen 2 major reorganizations across 2 different companies, and I will talk about that in a minute. And then we have someone who has trotted along the globe, has overseen a lot of business, I would say, restructuring, both in India and outside of India. So I think, today the idea would be to spend some time trying to understand from them their experience of how has restructuring generally led to value creation, which is the theme of today's discussion. Before I start, I think the connotation of restructuring is at times, people read it very, very in a limited manner to mean either mergers, demergers. But I think the idea today of this discussion is to go beyond that corporate restructuring and also discuss a lot more about business restructuring, because ultimately business restructuring is what leads to the need for a corporate restructuring. So it's very, very important that we understand how business restructurings have also led to value creation as much as corporate restructurings. Before I start the discussion with my panelists, just to give you some perspective, because I have had the privilege of overseeing restructurings, at least in India, over the last 17 years while I was at JM, and have been instrumental in a lot of restructuring, starting with the mega Reliance demerger, where we had split the businesses across the 2 brothers. I had the privilege of being part of that transaction. Then we did a restructuring of the Future Group. We then did the restructuring of Bajaj Group. So, JM, and within JM, I had the benefit and the privilege of being a part of those restructurings and how those restructurings have led to a lot of value creation. We don't have the forum right now, otherwise I would have probably walked you through how shareholder wealth was created pre and post that restructuring in form of the market cap increasing manyfold post those restructurings. Before we get into the restructuring, I think one thing which increasingly is being seen in the Indian context is a major thing which is leading to restructuring is simplification of businesses and simplification of corporate holdings. And one can see that in form of some of the recent restructurings also that you would have read about or heard about, including the one that's undergoing right now with Vedanta. They are splitting their entire Vedanta is being split into 6 different entities, through a demerger process. We had Jio, which was demerged out from Reliance. We have Tata Motors, where the passenger vehicle business is being demerged out. So there are a lot of examples that where we are seeing increasingly corporate India and businessmen looking at restructuring as a way to value creation, and that value creation is getting reflected in the share prices. So maybe I will now want to spend some time trying to understand how, my eminent panel members have seen restructuring in their businesses, and to draw some learnings from that. Maybe, I can start first with Mr. Anuj. I think we have the background that was given at the start of this session. So maybe I will start off with trying to understand a bit about your experience to start with for the audience. Given that you have over 30 years of experience with a lot of global experience, Indian experience, if you could just give a very quick, color on how has that journey been so far.
Thank you, Vikas, and good evening, everyone. So yeah, it's an absolute pleasure to be here this evening, talking to a very eminent set of people. I'm not a chartered accountant, so I feel a bit overawed here in the company of practicing and budding and experts in the area. So I'll give you a non-financial perspective of what business restructuring is. But I mean, just to share with you my background, look, I mean, I've had the fortune of working now for over 3 decades, and if I look at it, it's basically been 3 parts of my career. The roughly first decade was in India, where I learned the formative businesses thing by working in sales and marketing. In fact, I started my career in this city. I worked with ITC, which is just about 500 meters to the left on Chaurangi, on Russell Street, is where I started my career. So the first decade was spent in India in FMCG, sales and marketing. Then I moved overseas, where I worked and I lived overseas for about 14 years in Europe and Middle East, which was again in working in large organizations like Nestle. So I was with Nestle in Switzerland and then with them in Middle East. And then then moved to India about 7 years ago. So that's where my professional journey has been. In terms of having a kind of perspective or having witnessed restructuring, let me be absolutely honest. I have not seen, from a ring side, I haven't seen a big corporate financial restructuring. I'll be very honest. I'm in the midst of one right now, doing that for the organization which I work. But all along, leading up all my previous 29 years, I've worked in organizations which have been well established, had been leaders. So I worked in ITC, I worked in Unilever, I worked in Nestle. These were large companies which fortunately have not required to go through a lot of financial restructuring. But let me tell you, I mean, while they have not gone through that, I've seen all these organizations at different parts of time in their history, where they're constantly looking at restructuring or reshaping their business, the portfolio, the markets which they operate in, the segments. So to me, restructuring or, I would say reshaping your business portfolio is, I think it's a day-to-day part of business now. And while it was not so common a few decades ago, I think today it is becoming absolutely important because the environment is changing very fast. I will be very cliched by saying, change is the only thing which is constant now. But the pace of change is extremely, extremely fast. And therefore, if for any organization you have to have long-term, I would say viability, leadership, sustainability, you have to proactively kind of, respond to that change. And that responding to that change necessarily means that you have to look at, I mean, if restructuring is a bigger word or is a bigger thing, at least you have to look at how do you evolve and reshape your portfolio. And my experiences, I've seen this even in mature markets. So I worked in Europe, which is a very mature consumer goods market. Even there, while businesses did not need to do a financial restructuring because businesses were stable, but let me tell you, every 3 to 5 years, these businesses were looking at what geographies to enter, what geographies to exit, what product categories were reaching mature categories and where were more, I would say, innovation happening. So this whole thing of reshaping your portfolio and looking at what segments to target is an ongoing process. And to me, that is the starting point of business restructuring.
No, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely well said. And Anuj, if you could, while you do not have, a first-hand experience of witnessing a corporate restructuring, when it comes to business restructuring, I'm sure you have overseen a lot of business restructuring in terms of either product rationalization, geographical diversity, all of those things. So if you could just give some example around that as to, and how that led to value creation, that would be a good.
So I'll give you an example of let's say when I was in Nestle, and Nestle operates as has got multiple categories, and they have the basic food and beverage business, but they also had things like nutrition, which is a big part of the business. And in the late 90s, they said that look, as the world becomes more populated, there is a higher aging population, etc. How do we look at nutrition and not just looking at things? So, as a company, they went through a big, I would say, reorganization where they decided to have a nutrition business for every stage of your life cycle. So, infant nutrition to nutrition for adults to going into performance nutrition for sports, for looking at when you're in your middle ages, this whole thing about watching your weight, so weight management. So they did everything from, and they created a separate business unit called Nestle Nutrition. And there was a fair bit of acquisitions as well. So they acquired companies in the US which were all on weight management. They acquired companies based out of Israel which were doing cutting edge work on adult nutrition. So when you're going through serious critical illnesses and after treatment you need a lot of specialized nutrition, proteins, etc. How do you kind of do that? So they went through a lot of that. They created a separatist thing, and there was a big restructuring. Nutrition was supposed to be the focus area, and it was very interesting to see because what I saw was that it is about sometimes you have to do these things proactively. So they did it proactively. They didn't need to do it because their profitability wasn't there. They were thinking 15 years ahead. And they were saying, look, where is the next phase of growth going to come from? They were also looking at the fact that in F&B, in food and beverage, if you're in the same grocery space, you will, at some point of time, some of these products will become commoditized. You will have private labels coming in. So, you'll have margin pressures. So I think the organization was very smart by looking and saying, look, 10 years from when they looked at that, they said, what will be our growth rates? What will be the margins? And therefore, they said, look, how can we look at new growth areas or new areas where our margins could be protected, where innovation could create those moats for, against competition, and they got into this area. Were they successful? Not completely. Because this was a completely, it's like going far out. They were successful in certain parts and pieces, and they were not able to succeed. One area where they were not able to succeed was this whole area of, this weight management, which was at that point of time, I would say now I can look back and say it was a fad. It was a fashion. In the US, everyone was doing this. There was Weight Watchers, which was there. They paid $500 million to buy a company called Jenny Craig, which would make these subscription services and all of this. And in 3 years, 4 years, that kind of fad went away. So they were not successful there. They invested in nutrition, which is performance nutrition for athletes. So highly specialized stuff for cyclists, marathoners, etc. Again, didn't work out. Where they were successful was where they started looking at not just infant nutrition, but looking at nutrition-backed food. So I think there was a lot of, learnings in terms of how far you can stretch. Again, I think the biggest learning, and as all of you financial, experts would know, there was a big learning around, acquisitions. What price do you pay for an acquisition? And there's no guarantee that the acquisition will work out in the long run. So I think that was something which I saw firsthand, which was more of a business portfolio restructuring, which the company went through. And again, the learning there was that, not everything is successful, but, if you do that, you at least kind of build your moats for the future. That's number one. Number two, you try 5 things, and if you can pull off 2 or 3, that also secures your future. So it's not guaranteed that, if you do 5 initiatives, all 5 will pay off. And that's the advantage which you have when you're operating from that big stage.
Quite interesting, quite interesting. When we talk about business restructuring, and as you rightly pointed out, it involves a lot of factors to get a business restructuring successful. How important is overall stakeholder management in the entire process? And have you seen situations where that inefficient stakeholder management has led to value destruction? Maybe a brief example before we move to the other panelists.
Yeah, no, I think, look, at the end of it, for any business restructuring to work, it boils down to not necessarily about, like they say, it's a brilliant strategy, if not executed well, will fail. An average mediocre strategy, if executed well, will always work. So at the end of the day, it is not how sound was the plan or how sound was the strategy. It is about how well it is executed. And I think for execution, as I realize over the years, as I've been involved in multiple execution projects, one of the biggest things on pulling off good execution is outstanding stakeholder management. And stakeholder management is both internal and external. I think, working in large corporates, I've realized that internal stakeholder management is something which makes or breaks the whole thing. So from a personal experience, I will never undermine the importance of stakeholder management. And there is no one example. I think, I've worked in large companies. In every company, managing stakeholders is something which helps to get things rolling on time. And, it's not just about getting the big decisions always get addressed, and you always align stakeholders. My biggest learning is that the stakeholder alignment has to be on the smaller issues, because that is where you kind of get into logjams. On the bigger issues, you will never have a problem because of the criticality of it. Stakeholders will be forced to come together. Yeah. You will disagree, but you will agree ultimately at the end of it. It is the smaller things, more around the house. It's around things which are not seemingly business critical, but somehow they feed into it, which slows down the whole process. I'm a big believer that, one of the big success factors is stakeholder alignment and engagement, and that starts at a very early stage. That's not once you're in the journey. I think, you have to have stakeholder engagement right from, the stakeholders have to be part of the whole shaping of the restructuring. Because if you don't have early buy-in, then you'll always get into trouble. So yeah, I would just, in summary, I would say that, it is an absolutely critical element in terms of how do you go through a restructuring.
Thank you so much. Pradeep ji, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. We have had at JM Financial the advantage of taking his company Style Bazaar IPO. We were one of the book running lead managers, and I don't think so any discussion with Pradeep ji can start without people wanting to understand about his journey from a practicing CA to an entrepreneur. So that's something that everybody has always been extremely inquisitive about. So I think maybe if you could spend a few minutes talking about that journey, कैसा रहा आपका वो phase?
After passing CA, we never thought about the joining service. But without having any background, I started my practice. And to start practice without having any background, it is very difficult, very, very difficult. So that journey was from 1993 to, you can say, 2013. I entered in the business. Was basically roller coaster. And मेरे दिमाग में हमेशा ये चलता था कि भाई I have to do something different. तो हमेशा माइंड में चलता था कि भाई मेरे को बिजनेस करना है समथिंग. और मैं जब भी किसी से मिलता था तो मैं उनसे समझता था भाई आप कैसे क्या कर रहे हो, क्या नया बिजनेस हो सकता है. तो बिफोर स्टार्टिंग दिस स्टाइल बाजार इस डिस्कशन के दरमियान हमारे क्लाइंट्स हैं, उनसे मैंने चर्चा किया कि भाई कि अपने कोई अगर धंधा समझ में आता है तो अपने साथ में धंधा करते हैं। तो वो अपॉर्चुनिटी एक 2013 में आई हमारे पास में। तो बोला प्रदीप जी एक धंधा हमने सोचा है, तो अपने बैठते हैं। तो मैं गया और डिसीजन हुआ भी ऐसे से रिटेल का, गारमेंट्स रिटेल का बिजनेस करना है। तो मैं उनको जानता था, अच्छे आदमी है। तो पहला तो मैं देख रहा था भाई एसोसिएशन जिसके साथ में हम कर रहे हैं वो अच्छे होने चाहिए, अदरवाइज लॉन्ग टर्म में यू कांट मूव फॉरवर्ड। साथ में 2 पार्टनर और थे, तो बोले उनसे भी मिलवा दिया। तो फिर मैंने धंधे को समझा, धंधा है एक्चुअली में क्या भाई, रिटेल का बिजनेस है और बेसिकली सारा धंधा कैश सेल्स का है, क्रेडिट में कुछ है नहीं। तो इसका मतलब बैड डेट्स होने का स्कोप बहुत कम है। और दूसरा क्या है कि रिटेल का बिजनेस अगर एक बार आप सक्सेस होता है ना, कि बहुत एम्पल स्कोप है कि आप बहुत आगे तक जा सकते हो। तो हमने ये धंधा स्टार्ट किया था जस्ट एज अ सेकेंड सोर्स ऑफ इनकम। आई वॉज इन प्रैक्टिस। तो चलो भाई सबके पास में अगर 10 स्टोर खोलते हैं तो 1.5-2 करोड़ रुपये सबके पास में आ जाएंगे। तो दैट वाज द विजन, स्टार्टिंग विजन। तो 13-14 में हमने 2 स्टोर किए, इट वाज वेरी सक्सेसफुल। उसके बाद में 16 तक में हमने 8-9 स्टोर्स कर लिए थे। जब 17 में हमने 20 स्टोर कर लिए और मैंने एवरी स्टोर इज गिविंग वेरी गुड रिजल्ट। तो उस समय समझ में आया, और जो हमारे जो फाइनेंस हमारे पास में थे सारा हमने इन्वेस्टमेंट कर दिया। देर आफ्टर बैंक से लोन लिया, उसके बाद क्या करेंगे। तो बोले धंधा तो अच्छा चल रहा है। तो 17-18 में वी वेंट टू मुंबई और कुछ इन्वेस्टर के साथ मिले हम लोगों ने। तो इन्वेस्टर ऑल्सो अलाइंड विथ आवर विजन, और साथ में उनको हमारा बिजनेस मॉडल भी काफ़ी पसंद आया। नॉट ओनली अदर इन्वेस्टर, ऑल्सो राकेश जी। तो एक इन्वेस्टर ने बोला ठीक है मैं तो इन्वेस्टमेंट करूंगा, बट इन्वेस्टमेंट करने से पहले मैं आपके कलकत्ता में आके पूरा मॉडल समझना चाहता हूँ। तो ही केम टू कलकत्ता, सारा मॉडल समझा उन्होंने, एंड वहीं पर उन्होंने एक चेक फर्स्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट उन्होंने दिया। देन राकेश जी वाज द सेकंड इन्वेस्टमेंट। तो हमको ये समझ में आया कि हमारा बिजनेस मॉडल अगर कोई इन्वेस्टर अप्रोच कर रहा है, इसका मतलब बहुत स्कोप है। तो वहाँ से हमारी जर्नी स्टार्ट हुई। बीच में हर्डल्स आए, जैसे कोविड का हर्डल आया। तो इन्होंने जैसा बोला ना कि जैसे अलाइनमेंट विद द स्टेक होल्डर, रिलेशन विद द स्टेक होल्डर बहुत ज़रूरी है कि उस स्टेक होल्डर के साथ में आपका जो कन्फिडेंस बिल्डअप होता है ना, अल्टीमेटली दे हेल्प अस टू बिल्ड और ग्रो योर बिजनेस। तो उस समय जैसे हमारे धंधे में क्या है कि लैंडलॉर्ड बहुत बड़ा पार्ट है, बिकॉज कोविड के समय में हम लोगों ने उनसे रिक्वेस्ट किया कि देखिए कोविड का समय है और आपको 3 महीने 4 महीने किसी किसी स्टेट में 6 महीने तक दुकानें बंद रही। तो उन्होंने वेव अप किया रेंट को, और कहीं कहीं से मान लिया हमारे एवरी 3 इयर्स में 50% का रेंटल इंक्रीमेंट होता है। तो अगर उस पीरियड में अगर कोई रेंटल इंक्रीमेंट हो रहा है तो हम लोगों ने रिक्वेस्ट किया तो डेफर्ड है। तो ये कोविड का पीरियड तो हमारा ऐसे निकला, और उस पीरियड में फ्रॉम 13 टू यू कैन से 20 हमने जो मिस्टेक्स की, तो कोविड के समय में मेरे को ये समझ में आया कि उस मिस्टेक को, बिकॉज उसमें बिजनेस उस तरीके से ग्रो हो नहीं रहा, सारी चीज़ बनती, तो कहाँ कहाँ हम लोगों ने गलतियाँ की है उनको हम लोगों ने एनालाइज किया। पोस्ट कोविड उसको इम्प्लीमेंट किया तो उसके रिजल्ट आने चालू हो गए। तो दिस वाज द जर्नी, एंड देर आफ्टर हमने फाइनेंस भी जो लिया ना इन्वेस्टर से, वो फेज मैनर में लिया कि अगर मैं एक बार में लेता हूँ तो माइट भी मिसयूज हो सकता है, और मेरे को वैल्यूएशन कम मिलेगी। इन द अर्ली स्टेज द वैल्यूएशन वाज लोअर, बट जैसे जैसे मैं नेक्स्ट राउंड में गया तो वैल्यूएशन मेरे को ज़्यादा मिली, फिर नेक्स्ट राउंड में वैल्यूएशन ज़्यादा मिली। तो अल्टीमेटली भाई इन्वेस्टर आने के बाद में एक नेक्स्ट विजन हो जाता है, आपको कैपिटल मार्केट में जाना पड़ेगा. यू हैव टू गिव द लिवरेज टू द इन्वेस्टर कि भाई वो कैसे एग्जिट हो. तो अल्टीमेट गोल आपके कैपिटल मार्केट का था. एंड वी entered into the capital market, and on 6th of last month we listed in the stock exchange at the valuation of 2,700 pre-money. So this was my journey.
Fantastic journey, sir. While you have shown this to be a simple journey, I think everybody knows that retail is probably one of the difficult sectors in India to deal with, plagued with several challenges, which also includes, at times store rationalization, segment rationalization. So when it comes to some of these difficult decisions, right, कि कौन सा store एक point के बाद में बंद कर देना चाहिए if it's not working, how do you take those kinds of business restructuring related decisions, and how easy, difficult it is? Do you have a set parameter now? How do you go about doing that?
Till
And that,
2000.
sir, includes both store rationalization and segment rationalization. If, for example, कोई segment नहीं ठीक कर रहा है, do you rationalize that? Do you get into newer segments? How some color on that?
अगर हम सेगमेंट की बात करेंगे तो बेसिकली हम गारमेंट्स में है और नॉन एप्स है. नॉन एप्स कंट्रीब्यूटिंग अराउंड 14 to 15% ऑफ द टोटल रेवेन्यू. हमारे स्टोर्स में गारमेंट सारी चीज़ें मिलती हैं इंक्लूडिंग साड़ीज. तो इनिशियली टिल 2018-19 हमारा साड़ी का सेल्स अराउंड 12% था. उसके बाद हम लोगों ने डाटा जब एनालाइज करना चालू किया तो देखा कि साड़ी के अंदर में डेड स्टॉक ज़्यादा हो रहा है. बिकॉज साड़ी ऐसी चीज़ है, अगर किसी को मैरिज पर्पज से बाई करना है तो दे विल नॉट कम टू अस बिकॉज वी हैव लिमिटेड रेंज. दे विल गो टू द बेसिकली दोज हु आर एक्सपर्ट इन साड़ीज, स्पेसिफिकली साड़ीज. तो हमने लेटर ऑन आफ्टर कोविड उस साड़ी सेगमेंट को डाउनसाइज किया. डाउनसाइज करने के बाद में अप टू 1000 MRP के अंदर में हमने वो साड़ी रखी. एंड ट्रिमेंडस रिजल्ट क्या देखा कि अप टिल 1000 के अंदर में 8% हमारा कंट्रीब्यूशन था. 8% ऑफ द टोटल रेवेन्यू साड़ी से कंट्रीब्यूशन था, और मार्जिन हमारी 4 to 5% बढ़ गई फ्रॉम साड़ीज. तो ये हमने किया. अभी वी हैव स्टार्टेड कीपिंग द दिस फुटवेयर आल्सो, लाइट फुटवेयर, बेसिकली द मॉडर्न फुटवेयर. तो वी आर गेटिंग द गुड रिजल्ट्स.
And anything on store front पे, any stores that have not been performed well, some harsh decisions taken there?
Basically we have the different software. That software help us to analyze the data. One software is heavy that give us around 100 types of different reports. भाई कौन सा स्टोर कैसा परफॉर्म कर रहा है, वहाँ क्या बिक रहा है, क्या जाना चाहिए नहीं जाना चाहिए. और अगर कोई स्टोर परफॉर्म नहीं कर रहा है तो हम उसको वॉच कैटेगरी में डाल देते हैं 2 साल के लिए. और 2 साल के अंदर अगर वो हमारा ब्रेकेबल है तो इसका मतलब फर्दर स्कोप है उसके अंदर में रिवाइव होने का. इफ इट इज़ नॉट देयर, अगर स्टोर लेवल में अप टू 10 lakhs to 20 lakhs अगर लॉस आना चालू हो जाता है तो वी क्लोज डाउन डेट स्टोर्स. This is our policy basically behind the closure of stores. Otherwise, we have the metrics to select the stores, how to open the store, where to open the stores, वहाँ क्या पॉपुलेशन होनी चाहिए, कौन कंपटीटर है, वहाँ की पर कैपिटा इनकम क्या है, सराउंडिंग विलेजेस कौन से हैं जो कि उस मार्केट के ऊपर में डिपेंडेंट है. तो कंसिडरिंग ऑल दिस फैक्टर्स वी आर ओपनिंग द स्टोर्स.
Understood.
And basically we are we are opening a store on cluster based approach. Just to open the stores here and there is no sense. आप क्लस्टर बेस अप्रोच में अगर स्टोर ओपन करते हो तो आपको ईज होता है कस्टमर प्रेफरेंस को अंडरस्टैंड करने का. से इफ़ यू हैव द स्टोर्स इन वेस्ट बंगाल in every district, every sub-district or every small district, then you can understand the customer preferences. उनकी क्या पसंद है. According to their choice, you keep the stock there. तो chances of closing the stores are very rare. And we are the leader in West Bengal. मेरे को नहीं लगता है कि शायद वेस्ट बंगाल में एक या दो स्टोर हम क्लोज किए होंगे आज तक में. अदरवाइज क्लोजर रेट इज वेरी रेयर. हमें अभी इन्वेस्टर मीट वगैरह में सबने पूछा भाई वाई यू आर नॉट प्रेजेंट इन ऑल ओवर इंडिया. तो मैं बोला भाई धंधा करना है. तो रेदर अगर हम एक स्टेट में अपने आप को पूरा प्रेजेंस कर लें फिर दूसरे स्टेट मूव करें तो आई थिंक दैट विल गिव द मोर प्रॉफिट. एंड मिस्टर अनु सिंह विल बी एग्री विद दिस. They are going to close down, I think, in the South India, especially because क्या spread करना is very easy, but उसको run करना वहाँ का preference समझना is very tough.
In fact, you answered my next question, and I was going to ask that only. Based on your cumulative experiences, what do you think has worked better? Is it spreading wide or going deep into a particular geography? And I think the answer clearly is that you would want to probably go deep into local areas, make sure that you have that competitive edge, and then go wide. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think, look, it also depends on what size of a company you are. If you're of a certain size and you have the ability to sustain investments over a period of time, you could choose the option of saying, I'll be everywhere. But I think when you are intrinsically fighting a battle in terms of, getting to a certain level of profitability, not having the deep pockets to keep on investing, there is no point in, like I keep telling people, and this is a very famous quote, I don't know who said it, top line is always vanity, right? EBITDA is sanity and cash flow is reality. So, just by saying ki I want to operate in all states and I want to have 200 stores, because I want to have a presence in every state, it does not really make sense. And in fact, as Pradeep ji is saying, it's always good to be strong somewhere than to be present everywhere. So to your point, I totally agree that given certain context, being, I would say, inch deep is better than being a mile wide. Right, so I think that is what we're doing, and in Spencer's we've done exactly the same thing. So for the last 3-4 years, we are continuously making losses, and as part of business restructuring, the first thing which you have to you have to look at it very dispassionately. Yeah. I remember when in July when I presented to the board the decision to say a recommendation to exit from South and NCR. There was a lot of questions saying why, it was the first region we started with, how can we exit, agar hum nikal jayenge, we'll become only regional players. And my point is, look, I'd much rather be a stronger regional player than be a very, very weak national player. Because, fortunately for us, we are operating in a country where even if you operate in 4-5 states, it's a huge enough market, right? So you don't need to kind of, chase top line for the sake of top line. And to do that, you have to, like you said, you have to take objective, be absolutely non-emotional about it, and take really data-based decisions. And when we looked at our clusters of stores, we looked at where we are doing better, we realized that, there are geographies like East and in UP, where our brand has a better strength, where our store operating matrices are better. So, aap jo bhi criteria laga do, if some stores are doing better than the other, then you cannot say emotional that, this is a 20-year-old store. हमने पहला store Hyderabad में खोला था. Hyderabad में हमारे लोग इतना, then I think the emotion part has to be cut out. So that's the biggest learning.
So well said. So well
इसमें
said.
बोलूँगा, DMart is one of the best example of this. आप देखो DMart इस पे वेस्टर्न पार्ट में ज़्यादा है, वेस्टर्न पार्ट में है, कुछ साउथ पार्ट में. Till date they have not entered in the eastern part of India. तो उनका वैल्यूएशन देख लीजिए, मेरे ख्याल से अराउंड 3 लाख करोड़ का वैल्यूएशन होगा. तो आपको बिजनेस करना है, बिजनेस को समझना पड़ेगा कहाँ करना है, कहाँ से इनकम आने की है. अदरवाइज ओनली टू स्प्रेड द बिजनेस ऑल ओवर इंडिया, दैट इज नॉट द सेंस. एंड वन ऑफ द एग्जाम्पल इज विशाल मेगा मार्ट in 2011, Vishal Megawatt has 200 stores. It was run by the owner of V2, Ramchandra Agarwal. एंड उन्होंने डिस्ट्रेस सेल किया 70 करोड़ में. डिस्ट्रेस सेल करने के बाद में उसने लिया शायद श्री राम ग्रुप एंड टीपीजी. उन्होंने 360 डिग्री चेंजेस किया, 360 डिग्री रिस्ट्रक्चरिंग, और उसके अंदर में उन्होंने 100 स्टोर्स शट डाउन कर दिए उन्होंने, बिकॉज वो प्रॉफिटेबल नहीं थे या लोकेशन डिसएडवांटेजेस था. फ्रॉम 2011 to 2018 they earned the profit margin of 150 crores and sold their stake to Kedara and one of the PE consortium partner some and Kedara. And now they are after from 18 to 24. Now they are filing the DRHP and bringing the IPO at the valuation of 40 to 50,000 crores. Just in the span of 6 years, उनका वैल्यूएशन 8 to 9 टाइम्स वो लेके आ रहा है. तो बिजनेस को इफ यू आर अंडरस्टैंडिंग द बिजनेस वेरी वेल ना, तो यू कैन क्रिएट द वैल्यू, बट नहीं आ रहे, देन ओनली यू कैन सर्वाइव एंड क्रिएट द वैल्यू.
So in your case, how are you, leveraging e-commerce to supplement your physical store presence, because that again is one of the important aspects of competitive advantage?
Naturally, e-commerce, when you are physically present and you can better serve to the e-commerce. But we are in the value fashion retail. E-commerce is not our game, because in the e-commerce, operation cost is around 35 to 40%. But omni-channel, we are in omni-channel and we are doing very good. Customers are coming to our stores, selecting the items. If they are not getting that items, just they giving the details of that item, we deliver to at their address and they will make the payment from there.
Understood. Rahul, maybe you, I understand you have spent enough time at two organizations, Usha Martin and IFB. And I think you have had seen your share of fair challenges at both organizations. Would be good if you could throw some color on how that journey has been for the audience before I get deeper into each of those two stints.
Journey has been a tough journey, as well as a very enriching and learning journey throughout the career in both the organizations. One in a steel and another in the consumer product, two different segments altogether. But yes, difficult businesses, both were.
So, as I understand, in IFB, over I think your period that you were at IFB, the price probably moved from 17 to almost 1700 today, which is almost 100 times increase. 1800, okay. Directionally doesn't change, but yeah, 1800. So that's a phenomenal, I would say, value accretion that has happened to all the shareholders. Clearly, I mean, the entire organization is behind it. But what are some of those important things that led to this kind of enormous value creation? What would be those top 2-3 things that you think contributed maximum to this value creation?
Initially, we made some mistakes. We entered into non-core businesses. We had tea garden. We entered into real estate, NBFC business, whatnot. The balance sheet was not that strength, it was there. So we reorganized everything, sold all unrelated business, focused on our core strength, which was engineering, improved the quality of the product. The brand was good. Machines were liked by the customer. Today also the brand, being an Indian brand, is perceived as an international brand in India. Many people still don't know that it's a brand owned by a Bengali gentleman based out of Calcutta. So ultimately the price is a function of your PL, the hygiene in the balance sheet, and the product. So combination of these all three has seen the journey of 17 to 1800 rupees in a span of maybe 12, 13 years.
You, as part of your role, given we have, that's the distinction that we have amongst our panel members. I think as a CFO, from a CFO perspective, I understand you keep evaluating a lot of opportunities, which includes either acquisitions which are external to you or within internally reorganizing. One example that you gave was hiving of non-core businesses. What are some of the parameters that you keep in mind to evaluate whether a particular decision could be value accretive or not? How do you go about assessing that?
Look, we are not looking into any unrelated businesses now. We are very focused. And when we evaluate any business into the same vertical, either a vertical or a forward or a backward integration, we always see how it creates a value to us and the shareholders. Finance is not cheap. The businesses also do not come cheap. It's very easy to go in the market and throw a fancy price and buy a business. Ultimately, the business should make sense to you, add to your bottom line, and create shareholders' wealth.
Yeah. If only people could follow that so religiously. Um,
Having burned our fingers, we are very cautious now.
you probably, as part of the process, must also be evaluating some opportunities that come out of IBC. Have there been any? What's your take on the general IBC journey that you are seeing that India is traveling through? Is this also likely to lead to a lot of restructurings, or you don't think that this is going to be a main driver for restructurings?
We have seen certain assets in the IBC process also, but we come from a little conservative group. So we lost on the bidding side. There are players in the market offering better terms, better price. So we lost on those segments. Now when we look at, we feel that we missed the opportunity. We were wrong in putting a number to it. It is purely a number game when you bid for a business, especially in a IBC process when there are competitors lined up to take a business which is good.
Understood. During your stint at Usha Martin, I understand there used to be different segments that the businesses was operating in. Was there a sharper focus that was brought to probably streamline some of those operations which were going somewhere a bit haywire? We understand segmental reporting and clustering of some of the businesses also led to sharper focus, is what we get to hear from the outside world. But any insights from your stint at Usha Martin around some of those things?
While in the Usha Martin, we did a good restructuring of the business. It was not of the financial side. There were two companies. One was Usha Martin, which was always a listed company. We had another company, Usha Beltron, which was not a listed company. It was a cash-rich company, whereas Usha Martin was always a debt-ridden company with some carry-forward losses also. So to create shareholders' wealth and to strengthen the balance sheet, one balance sheet, we merged both the entities. Got the advantage of carry-forward loss, a strong balance sheet, reducing the debt to the large extent because one was a cash-rich, another was a highly debt. So that helped on a long run for the group as a whole.
Understood. And finally, do you think there are areas where the regulatory framework requires a bit of a rehaul to make restructurings much more time efficient. For example, we keep hearing that the NCLTs are completely clogged with a lot of matters, and it takes at least a year and a half to get mergers, demergers, completed. Do you see any such areas which need really some revamp?
Yes, definitely. In the old era, we have seen when the mergers were outside the purview of NCLT. The NCLT was created with the only objective to fasten up the process. But still, the time lag which is needed by filing an application and getting an order is too large. You need maybe a special bench to look after a merger application and a separate bench under an NCLT to look after IBC process. Maybe the bench is too much clogged up with the process of IBC, so the merger, the restructuring, petitions get a lot of time for the court to consider. So maybe two different set of benches under an NCLT can be a solution.
Understood. Anuj, this decision, of looking south market and then taking this tough decision, I'm sure it's not easy. How did you go about with employee engagement? Because if that goes wrong, the entire morale across the organization can go down, and that could lead to value destruction instead of value accretion. How did you go about ensuring that there is a good level of employee engagement?
Yeah. No, I think, look, any measure which is about, kind of restructuring, and in this case it was about shutting down operations in one part of the region, does trigger a lot of employee insecurity. And, we were absolutely conscious of that fact. And therefore, there are a couple of things which one needs to do. I think number one is one needs to be absolutely transparent and proactively communicate what really the issue is. And what we did was, in this case, I did a series of town hall meetings. I traveled to also the regions where we were not exiting, and we had those employee dialogues. And we tried to explain to them the reason why we're doing it. And I think, that is a better step than people hearing from what is happening in the organization. Now, does that completely allay the fears of the organization? No, it does not. Because look, I mean, people, will always keep conjecturing कि, अभी इतना लॉस हो रहा था, अभी साउथ बंद किया है, अगर नहीं होगा तो कुछ और बंद करेंगे. So, you can't do away with the complete insecurity and the fear which is there. What we said is we trying to turn it around into a positive thing by saying that, look, these were the areas or the regions where we were doing losses. Now, rather than worrying about what will happen next, if each one of you focus in terms of making sure that your stores continue to do well, you will be establishing the company on a strong position so that this will not happen. So I think, telling them objectively what the numbers was helped. Number three, what we also did was we demonstrated and we kind of put in place where we said that we are not just shutting stores, we are opening stores. So in the East, we opened 3 more stores. In UP, we opened 4 more stores. So the employees in those regions feel that, okay, it's not a one-way street where they're only closing stores, they're opening that. And look, number three, somewhere, the most important thing is when you go through this, you have to tie some of the employees, I would say, performance and employees' earnings into the turnaround plan. So we have announced and we have communicated at a store manager level incentives for everyone, including some long-term retention. So we had to identify and retain a core set of people because yes, there is this insecurity which does play, and it's only natural. Now, whatever you can do, you can keep telling people, but people will. It's only natural. If I were in their position, I would also have the same thing. Yeah.
Pradeep ji, we have seen several situations where bad corporate governance has led to, businesses coming to a stage where they either have to be shut down, they have to be restructured, sold, divested. Now that you are a listed entity, I'm sure there is a different level. Otherwise, also before listing, also I'm sure there was a very high standard of corporate governance. But now that you are listed, you probably have an additional responsibility. How do you see the role of corporate governance? Increasingly, especially in a listed entity, and how do you manage, very high standards of corporate governance? While this is not really linked to the topic that we are discussing, but as I said, sometimes not managing this leads to, businesses going down and ultimately needing a surgery which otherwise could have been avoided.
Particularly in the capital market, corporate governance and transparency is very, very necessary tools. Otherwise, not a single investor will interested in your company. When the investor came to in our company, the first the condition was that the corporate governance, and two of the investors, they have been appointed from their side non-executive director in our board, and you can say whether there was a regulatory governance was required or otherwise. We have complied every governance in our companies. So it is a must for your company to, if you want to grow and if you want to associate with the investor, good investor.
Fantastic, sir. Maybe I'll just let the floor open now to people who would want to ask questions, if any, to the panel members.
So, thank you so much for the insights, by the way. It's been a very, very insightful session so far. Especially when you're looking at acquisitions or restructuring, how do you really, I mean, anybody could answer that. Probably Anuj sir could be very well positioned. But anybody could answer that. How do you look at the potential synergies while you're trying to acquire another company? And I know for retail, while you mentioned that you haven't come across too many financial restructurings, but I know there's a lot of brand transactions that happen in the retail space. So any insights on that would be very helpful.
Yeah, so I think, look, I'll give you a very conceptual answer to that. I think besides, one acquisition is looking into opportunities for you to either grow. So that could be you are acquiring somebody or an organization where you have certain, let's say, product development capabilities or certain intellectual properties which you believe will help you scale your part of the business. It could be where you believe that there are some synergies in terms of back end, front end. So, when you're adding on scale to that particular business, it is not just that it's just A plus B, but you feel that, you can give me a lot of other operational synergies. That is a reason for acquiring. It could be as simple as, complementary geographies. So if I'm a strong, organization in North and East and have somebody who is equally strong in South and West, and you could have a bigger scale operation which can help you in, let's say, better sourcing efficiencies while keeping front end. So I think there's a whole variety of, strong logic which exists on paper. And I think that's what drives most acquisitions. Now, what makes them successful or not so successful is, I think, in my opinion, two things. A, how much are you paying for it, right? And number two is how well are you integrating in post? Because a lot of these promises remain promises on paper if you cannot realize all the back-end efficiencies, etc. So at the end of the day, and I have very experienced CFOs and chartered accountants who can tell you what's the right value, but acquisitions start with the right intent, with the right strategic rationale, which is, either it gives you growth opportunities or there's an opportunity for you to optimize, etc., synergies, all of that. All of those are the right reasons. But what determines success or failure is the fact that how much have you paid and how much have you been able to juice out of it is the million-dollar question. And there have been successful examples and there have been not so successful examples. I gave you when I was talking about, Nestle has done a lot of acquisitions. Not all of them have been successful. And I think, it's a variety of reasons. I talked about when you're entering, I guess, for them, when they were entering absolutely, I would say 2 degrees removed businesses, which were businesses of the future, sometimes it does not, because that potential does not pay out. Whereas if it is just 1 degree removed, so when Nestle acquired the international waters business, it was a hugely successful acquisition because it gave them, captive, water bottled at source in certain international markets, and the market was growing at that point of time. It was a diversification from the bottled business, which is not a high margin business. So some of these acquisitions work because whatever was put down by the people putting the whole deal on paper, that comes true. And some of them don't work because it's just too far removed from what the organization is. Or you just end up simply overpaying for that particular asset. So I think, that's my experience.
Thank you so much. And we did observe a lot of emphasis on the internal stakeholder management, which is how you actually deal with the transaction after it has been acquired. But yes, maybe the quantification piece of it, and I'll probably request some of the CFOs sitting out there to talk about it. How do you really look at the quantification of a potential acquisition when you're looking at synergy? So for example, Rahul sir, you mentioned that you probably went wrong when it came to a potential acquisition under the IBC route. So what are you doing to look at quantifying the potential synergies, basically? Any insights on that would be helpful.
One insight I can tell on your behalf is appointing a good banker.
and possibly valuers. I'm on the valuation side as well. Yeah.
Listen, till you assign a figure, it is always an Excel sheet and a calculation on the Excel sheet. We all knows the formula, IRR, NPV. We calculate based on it. Ultimately, when you acquire at that number and the business goes well, then all Excel sheet, all formulas, nothing works. So ultimately, it is the guts, what should be the right value apart from the Excel sheet, which works.
सर डिपेंड करता है आपका विजन भी क्या है एक्विजिशन के पीछे में से अभी रिसेंटली 2022 में वी मार्ट ने अनलिमिटेड उनका वी मार्ट का प्रेजेंस ऑल ओवर इंडिया में एक्सेप्ट साउथ इंडिया तो उन्होंने अनलिमिटेड को एक्वायर्ड किया 2022 में एंड जस्ट आफ्टर कोविड सबको ये लग रहा था कि फ्यूचर इज ई कॉमर्स तो उन्होंने साथ में लाइम रोड को भी एक्वायर्ड किया तो दे आर डूइंग गुड इन दिस अनलिमिटेड बट लाइम रोड में वो बर्न कर रहे हैं बिकॉज वैल्यूएशन रिटेल में दिस ई कॉमर्स इज नॉट डूइंग गुड तो अल्टीमेटली दे आर बर्निंग तो आपका विजन क्या है अकॉर्डिंग टू दैट यू वैल्यू द pricing the acquisition.
So, Anuj sir, question to you. So, what is the biggest challenge when we are, say, doing a merger, say, between two companies? Is it the culture between these two companies, the people management, maybe the merger of the technologies? Which is the most challenging in your experience that you have faced?
I haven't really done a large-scale merger, so I'm not best placed to it. But I've been part of, I would say, it's more of an integration. So we had distributors in different parts of the country. So when I was in Middle East, we had operations in different parts, and they were all agents and distributors. And we decided to kind of, bring them all under the company umbrella. So it was a kind of an, acquisition and integration, I would say. And they were running it. So there was no change in the product. We were doing the same thing. There was no change in the customers. So, relatively simple integration exercise on paper. But I think the biggest challenge always, and that's how it played out, was how do you integrate the people practices and the culture. So culture is a very, culture is a very difficult word to define. Everyone says, culture of the place. What does culture mean? I think, at the end of the day, it stems down to what are the values, behaviors which result in the culture. And obviously, if you're coming from, it's like, if you have two friends, right? They might be the best of friends. They might be going to the same school, but they come from two different family backgrounds, where there are different rituals, there are different practices. So there is a certain level of unlearning and relearning which needs to happen. And to me, that's the single biggest barrier when you talk about not just integration or acquisition or mergers, but any learning journey which you have to go. It is about unlearning. And I think that's the single biggest kind of a detriment even when it comes to mergers and acquisitions. So you're absolutely right. It is about it's about the people, and it's about the people practices, and it's about the behaviors. And very often it is not that they are very different in terms of value. I mean, everyone has the same, intrinsically the same values and the same purpose in business. Everyone turns up in business to be successful and to make money. So you can say, look, why is it that the culture? But it's the house of it, and it is how you how you're oriented, and that takes as human beings, there's a certain level of conditioning, and to change that, you have to unlearn and then relearn, and unlearning is very difficult. For all of us, unlearning things is very difficult. Right? We can learn new things, but unlearning things is difficult. So that is really the biggest, I would say. And it's not very difficult to do if it's focused. Yeah.
So people, meeting people's expectations, merging maybe their roles or their pay scales, meeting their cultures, all this I think is always complex between,
Softer part is
always complex. Yeah, thank you.
I
Rahul
will
sir.
give a live example on this. We were into domestic washing machines. We acquired a business which is into industrial washer. We had a market share of 20% in India. We acquired a company which was in the industrial washer, which has a 40% market share. So combined together, 60%, very good deal. We acquired the business. Immediately after the acquiring of the business, we could not integrate the people. सेल्स फोर्स को बोला, आप लोग सुबह ऑफिस नहीं आते? एक एक करके 1 महीने के अंदर में इंटायर सेल्स फोर्स लेफ्ट. सो बिजनेस वाज देयर, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कैपेबिलिटी वाज देयर, देयर वाज नो सेल्स टीम टू सेल द प्रोडक्ट. So it was the integration of the people. What Anuj ji says is perfectly the same point. The most important is the integration of the people.
So if there are no other questions, should we conclude this panel discussion with a vote of thanks?
So as we come to an end of this insightful panel discussion, it's my privilege to extend this vote of thanks to our panelists and our moderator today. Firstly, I would like to extend my gratitude to our panelists, Mr. Singh, Mr. Chaudhary and Mr. Agarwal, for sharing their expertise and experience. I would like to just highlight some of the key takeaways that I have from this entire discussion. One, change is the only constant and the pace of change is extremely fast. Second, execution is more important than the strategy itself. Third, your partner in business will be an important factor for your success, as well as the relationship that you have with your shareholders, stakeholders is extremely important for building or growing businesses. And of course, there's no harm in closing down or downsizing any business for overall profitability. You can't just go and follow the trend. You need to have a vision before any sort of a business restructuring decision is taken. A special thanks to Mr. Kothari for skillfully guiding through this entire discussion and ensuring that we cover both challenges as well as opportunities in business restructuring. Thank you so much. I would now like to invite our committee members as well as all the participants to please join us for a group photograph on stage, please.